Hello, and welcome to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Today, we're interviewing David Verbeek, sponsored by Camera Museum of London at 44 Museum Street. David Verbeek, you are in Taiwan now, and you are a filmmaker. You've been making films for many, many years, since 2005, or since you graduated in 2005. What's the situation now in Thailand regarding, Taiwan regarding COVID as a filmmaker? Just to get a perspective.
Well, it's been surprisingly normal here, actually. I think this is the positive feedback loop. I was okay. I'm going to close Teams.
We're going to close Teams. Okay, I'm going to keep it on, and I'm going to turn the mic off.
Or maybe I just mute Teams.
Oh yes.
Yes. Okay, I just muted Teams.
Okay.
I think that did it. Okay. Yeah. No. Taiwan is doing is one of the very few countries that has been doing very, very well in its approach to COVID-19 situation. So, as a result, people here have been following the rules very strictly, but there has been no lockdown or there has been no real big closure of any kind of public life. So yeah, it's been very lucky here. There have been very strict quarantine measures, so I haven't really traveled in this period. I went back to Amsterdam once and then had to do a 2-week quarantine when I got back, and that quarantine is very, very strictly imposed. I mean, you really literally just cannot leave the door, and nobody can visit you, and you have to have food delivered, and so it's quite a severe thing. So I wouldn't want to do that more than once. So I'm staying put right now, which is really, I mean, which is also kind of connected to this documentary that we're going to talk about, because my lifestyle was really all about travel, and I spent the last, I would say, 15 years of my life very much in between Europe and Asia and sometimes America. So I was always traveling a lot, well, this has put us into a new type of concentration, so to speak.
The film was made in 2018 and is called Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains. How did the title come about?
Um, the city of Chongqing has a very long history, and it was because it's located, really in like in where the Yangtze River meets at a crossroads, surrounded by thousands of mountains. So like there had always been poetry, Chinese poetry, that had described the city as, had described the city's beautiful landscape in the mountains. So the city of a thousand mountains is something, that already existed. So it was rather obvious for me to then, once I was doing a documentary about trap hip hop, to come up with the title "Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains." The double meaning of the word "trapped" also is very nice, because of course there's trap hip hop, but the characters are in a way trapped in a society that is, that limits their freedom to a great extent.
And you talk about freedom and censorship, and rap music. What brought you to the story?
Before I made this film, I had been working on a film in China for many years, and at first that film passed through the Chinese censorship. But since it was a big project, and it was a big fiction film, I usually do fiction. Actually, Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains is my only documentary so far. So I was working on that fiction film, and over the time that it took to get it financed, the Chinese government had changed so much and was actually in the process of closing down again. That the censorship had changed to an extent that the film was no longer possible to be made. So I myself had been censored, and years of preparation had gone, was wasted. So I very much felt firsthand the frustration of being censored while living in China, where I had lived for several years. Um, and then I heard that this genre of rap, of particularly Chongqing rap, Sichuan rap from Sichuan province, was becoming insanely popular. And then one summer, the government kind of cracked down on it and kind of declared it illegal. And it was really the fact that these young kids that had you know that had seen themselves, had tried to express, had tried to find their individuality through music, and this was stopped. That was my interest. My interest was not rap music per se. I was, and also in other films that I've made, I'm very keen to explore how the new generations in China are are trying to find their individuality and their identity, and the censorship is one of the opposing forces there. So when I heard that these rappers were no longer able to do their craft, I was instantly drawn to the subject, because it was a theme that I had been exploring for longer, and also because I had recently myself experienced what it was like being censored. So that drew me to the subject. I knew nothing about rap. I didn't know any hip hop artists, but I think that's one of the most amazing things about China, is that in fact the government might be very closed, but the people are very open and very curious, and it was surprisingly easy for me to. Well, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was the openness that I encountered really blew me away, and the difficulty was really to find the right point of entry. But I mean, in China you have WeChat, where we use WhatsApp and Skype and all that. They have one centralized app, and everyone uses it, and whole everything in your life is controlled by it almost. Um, and that's WeChat. And through my own WeChat account, I just started to ask friends, do you know anyone in Chongqing? Do you know anyone in the music community? Do you know rappers? And just one thing led to another, all on my phone, all chatting away, and within like 2 weeks of, reaching out to people and adding new friends, and I got, into the city and also into the music community, and soon found my way, into the people that had something interesting to say about it.
I'm very curious. How did you find these incredible characters, and was it easy to film?
Well, I mean, yeah, I found them one at the time. Um, I first found Lady Duck. Um, I first found her, and then I believe that um, she had a friend that was shooting a music video for Gui Bien, Ghost Bane. um, and then I was interviewing like a lot of people that are a lot of things that aren't in the film, and through one of those contexts, I also found the other character with the tattoos, and Mr. Da, Master Da, and they all had incredible stories. So it was really a matter of of really seeing what's there, and it's a documentary more than a fiction film. You really create it in the editing. So I was at some point considering making a 40-minute film out of this, or even extending it into a feature. um, but in the end, I chose to do something that was very tight, and that was that chose this form. Um, yeah. I
I
mean, yeah, and as I said, the characters were very approachable. Um, there was some difficulty. I remember, for example, there's a scene in the middle of the film where we are sitting in a restaurant, and the guys are getting quite drunk, and they're basically saying things like, there's no freedom in China, but hip hop will change this game. And I had already finished shooting for the day, because I chose, as kind of an extra challenge, it turned out to be, of course. I chose this steady cam kind of way of shooting, this glide cam, which is like a very heavy machine, and I shot everything myself. And actually, there was only one person doing the documentary. Sometimes I had some help; somebody helped me carry something, but it was a very very small project, very low budget, and so I shot these things myself, and I was done for the day already. And I had, and the camera system, that the gimbal had run out of battery. So I had just detached my Sony A7R II, and I just had it, and I was drinking with them, and we were kind of getting drunk, and they started to say these kinds of really spot on things, and really showing their frustration with the situation. And so I turned on the camera, and kind of handheld, which was a totally different style as I was really using for the documentary. It was on the table, and I kind of tilted it up an angle, and kind of saw look through the viewfinder a little bit, like, okay, it seems to be all right. But there was no microphone anymore either, so the sound in that scene is pretty bad. But they said, what they even themselves called the real talk at that moment. Now, when I went to their studio the next day, and I asked them to repeat those kind of things, or elaborate on them, or like do a more official interview, they would not say anything remotely interesting. Like, they would just like turn around all of the questions, and they would just, obviously they had gotten cold feet. Obviously they were afraid that that I was going to put something in there that would get them in trouble. So, and understandably so. And so I've also been very cautious with the film. Finally, I didn't put in anything that would really get them into trouble, or I would, or really use their real names, or also I was also quite careful not to release the film in any way or form in China, because it would be censored there anyway. But um, but I mean, so this was of course a big consideration, and this was something really, because if you're shooting something inside China, and people, and the government is watching, Big Brother is watching also, then of course you're going to have to find people that are at the right moment, at the right time, when they're in the right state, that actually tell something that's valuable. Otherwise, you get this politically, sensitive, or politically correct, modified version of everything. Um, so that was one of the challenges, and in with all the characters, I had to kind of face this difficulty. Like, how do I, not let them say too much, but also, kind of really let them tell the story the way they feel it, at least.
were you at all worried that maybe your footage might be confiscated or anything like that? Were you being watched, do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, you would think so, almost, like, right? But no, not really. Um, I never really encountered anything where I was like sure, like, wow, I am being watched, or this is, that dude standing right there, he's from the government, or no, not really. And I mean, there is this shot in the film where I asked Master Da to walk down this alley, and I zoom in, or I myself travel towards this CCTV. And since it's quite a difficult shot, and I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and it's not, I when it's too bumpy, I don't like it. So I'm like, I did that shot we did like 10 takes of that. So just imagine if there's somebody watching on the other side of the CCTV, watching me, go towards them, 10 times. So at that point, of course, I was a little bit like, okay, so is anyone coming? Shall we do it again? But nobody arrived. No, I mean, but I think this is also the reason why I did it completely on my own. I didn't want to bring trouble to others, and I was like, okay, I'll take the risk, and I'll do this by myself. And there's no permits. There's it's just a guy with a gimbal. Some It's just a weird tall foreigner that thinks the city is interesting, that's shooting lots of stuff with a gimbal, and one other people, and there's like a radio mic on the wrapper. So that's also why I kept it this small. But I think one of the really nice things about the times that we live in right now, with the cameras and the technology and everything the way it is, that you know like the cameras and the lenses are so light sensitive, and you can do so much stuff that looks really so gorgeous, if you find a location like Chongqing, which is just out there, that you can, if you investigate a little bit in what are like the key technologies to really make something cinematic, and you have a feeling for that, you can get so much with so little. And another big thing there is the post production. I mean, you have to, you can't underestimate the sound, and there, whereas the way to get the footage was as documentary as it could be, because it's just one person with a camera in a real location following some characters. So that was very, very real. But everything you hear in the film, all the sound, is about as unreal as it can be. I mean, there's almost nothing that was in a way documentary recorded. Everything was replaced with something that sounded better or more movie, or so. So we spent, me, the composer, and my sound team, the sound designer, we spent weeks and weeks, in Amsterdam, after I'd gotten back from Chongqing, in some attic, tweaking the sound, and so yeah, that's also yeah, that's where the work also lies.
And during the making of the film, did you have an audience? Did you know what the story would be as well? Did you have people in mind that you're telling the story to?
Yeah, because I made the film for a documentary platform in Amsterdam. That's a producer called Jos de Putter, who is doing something called the Web Docs. And his concept is basically that he wants to do, or that he commissions people in places wherever the story is happening, to do a video letter. Usually it's only one person. So he commissioned someone, for example, there was something in Lampedusa about refugees arriving there. There was also something in Iran about women driving. There's always a very there was also Radio Kobani in Kobani about the Peshmerga fighters. So he always finds, the right person to tell a story, something very contemporary, something very now. And it has to be, between 10 and 20 minutes, and it's for the internet primarily. So usually these things are, so it had to be something like that. But, when I got the opportunity to do this, and it was like really like for a budget of, I think, like 8,000 euros or something, so you can, buy tickets for that, maybe, rent a few lenses and some hotel rooms, and it's gone. But that's kind of the budget for something like that. And when I took it, it was kind of an unusual episode for those web docs because I'm a very fiction-minded filmmaker, and as a photographer, I had fallen in love with Chongqing, where I'd been once before, and did a photo series about. So I just really wanted to get something very, very rich of atmosphere and really set a very strong cinematic tone. Um, so that's why I went way overboard with this assignment, if you will. Like it became something much more filmic and than these web docs usually are. But I mean, it all started really, by the fact that I discovered while living in China what was going on with the hip hop community, and of course, you have to have the right theme and the right subject at the right time. There's I don't see that there's actually so much difference between making a documentary and a fiction film. I mean, for me, if I do a fiction film, I also am always asking myself first and foremost, like, why this now? Like, why does this have to be told now? So I'm always looking for a link, something that's contemporary and that people need to know. And then in terms of how to work, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're real people. They have real stories, but like I already told you, there's still take one, two, three, maybe take 10, until I find that I have that little puzzle piece for my editing, which I already know that I'll need at some point. You also asked, like, did I already know what the story would be? And that's really something that was very hit and miss. Like I had this idea that I wanted to do this film about a bunch of rappers. I knew that the city had to be the protagonist. Um, but as I researched on and as I found more characters, I really didn't know until I had shot most of it, like who my main characters would be, what the tension between them would be, what they would represent. And only when I was editing, it was like, okay, what comes first and what comes last? And it was very, very flexible. um yeah.
And how many hours of footage did you have there?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea.
Would you say 50, 100 hours?
Something like 50. Yeah,
And
something like
and
50.
and how did the Guardian come on board at some point?
Yeah, when it was done. So it was first it was made, and then it was already a web doc. So it was, they had permission because they had given me the original budget of it. So they would put it on their own platform. But it was also selected to ITFA, and it was also selected to many festivals around the world, actually, and it won quite a few awards, and so it became this very successful festival film as well. And yeah, then the Guardian bought it, came on board, put it on their YouTube channel. Then the Atlantic also came on board. Uh, some other notable platforms came on board. I think the film has been seen, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of times, maybe a million, if you add up all these views from all these different platforms. Um, it's very nice, to because I made this for me. I made this film, while I was really waiting for a way to do the next feature. Um, and like I said, a film was blocked in China, and I finally shot it in Taiwan. And it was a film about it's called Dead and Beautiful, and it just premiered, actually, and it's now going to be released. Um, and I mean, so there was one summer in 2008 that I found this subject. But I was very frustrated because I had already been, working on this on Dead and Beautiful for a long time, and it got blocked by censorship. And then and then after I did this, after I did Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains, we found another way to do it in Taiwan, and so that film is now coming out. But what is so lovely is that you can if you find a right subject, and you're just willing to get the camera in your hands, and shoot something, and give it your all. um, you can make something that now online, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that what I'm used to is to get a kind of feeling of satisfaction after making a film by the festival circuit. So, okay, the film gets selected. I've been selected once to Cannes, so it's like very prestigious and it's great and blah, blah, and then you're like all happy about it and you're like feel proud of it and you're like, wow, I got here, and it's like, I'm going to the Olympics. So I got very used to that kind of earlier on in my career. And now, next to that, I just kind of find that it is also even actually more rewarding if do a film like this, and it's put on YouTube for at the Guardian, and you can read the comments, and you can see like, okay, so how do people actually react to this film just immediately, honestly, without you in the room. And what I found was that people really appreciated about this project, really appreciated the mood and the sensitivity for the cinematic feeling of this piece. And I had no idea that that would be appreciated that much. I mean, because if you do something a documentary, and if it's for the Guardian, it's like newsworthy. So in a way, it's like a news item. So you assume that people click on things online and that they want to know something about the subject, and that they just want, even if it's a talking head and they hear something they didn't know before, like, oh, that's interesting. And okay, great. I got this knowledge. I'm educated in this now. That's what I wanted. You could argue that maybe it doesn't matter so much whether it's like a long suspenseful shot and the sound is just right and blah blah. So I was like, okay, so it's going to be on YouTube, and okay, well, does is that going to matter? Is that going to find the right audience there? Is it going to be appreciated any more than if I would have filmed it in a very normal way? And just in the comments, it was so apparent that so many people appreciated that. So that for me was really like a new really like an eye-opening moment, like, wow, okay, this is actually a great way to approach an audience. And I'm hopefully going to do a lot more of it.
And I'm going to ask three quick questions. One about the cinematic style. Were you always handheld? And you did mention that. The second one is, what's the fascination with the East? What brought you to East Asia? And lastly, what are your future projects? And then I will give it to the floor and see if anyone else wants to ask you questions.
Okay. Well, firstly, I mean, so this style
I'm sorry, and within the style, the edit. How much did the editor really help you with the story as well?
It's when you decide that you're going to use this kind of heavy gimbal, to tell your story. Usually, it's quite difficult because you're doing documentary, so the most logical choice is to take the camera on the shoulder, and just be able to get whatever you need to get because it's happening, it's not planned. So when you use this style, sometimes you get very lucky. Most of the times, of course, you don't. So you have to kind of find a way that, okay, I'm telling the story in a way that, I'm not anticipating all the time that much. I'm basically, telling the mood, and I'll find a way to get what I want from the characters. I'll find, I'll do an interview, I'll do that in voiceover, or I'll plan for them to walk from there to there. So it's a bit more fictionalized. But sometimes also some, things happen that are also very nice to capture in this way, when it's kind of dreamy and smooth and floating. For example, the last shot of the film, where like it's like we're going through all those slogans, and I just found those and was like, okay, I'm just going to shoot this. And the sun was really nice. And then while I get to the end of it, this girl, walks by, and she just walks by. I just see her from the corner of my eye, and there's a very slowly move to her, and then I follow her. Of course, at that moment, I didn't know that was going to be the end of the film, and that would kind of symbolize a hope for maybe future generations even yet to come. And I didn't know it was going to be the end, but now it works like that. But that's so there I got very, very lucky. So this is the thing about the style. Your other question was
The edit.
the
What
edit.
about the edit? How did that?
Well, I mean, yeah, the edit it was a very um, it was very loose when it came in, because I really didn't have much of a structure. I had got story A, B, and C, and I had this idea, this controlling idea that the real protagonist is the city. So I had a lot of mood footage of the city, and then I connected it together in the editing, and that didn't, there were weeks that I was working on it where I was like, well, it's going absolutely nowhere. It's not going to be a very successful project. And then, you have people come in, and you listen to what you want to listen to, and you don't listen to what you don't want to listen to. And then it just kind of, takes a life of its own, because it's work. That's what it is. It's very, very hard work, and it's not giving up, and it's just knowing that there's something in this material. You just can't really see it yet, and you just keep trying out to rearrange them, and again and again, and you save versions, and there's really nothing really else to say about it in general, besides that it is just, perseverance and a lot of putting a lot of hours into it. Also, one other thing I would say about editing documentary is that, you have to see sound separate from video. A lot of documentary makers tend to think like, okay, I've captured a moment, visually and auditively. So this is what it is, right? Of course, I can put, voiceover, I can replace music, but that's just marginal. Like the building blocks are what they are. Well, in my approach, at least, it really isn't. Like, once you take away the sound of something, or you make a composition of music, and then you fix these, silent pieces of video, when you shoot them all kind of in the same style, and you're like floating through stuff, things can become completely different. So that actually also makes your puzzle even more insanely complicated, because you don't have pieces. Every piece can be used also in a totally different way. But I remember that one of the key moments where I started to make an edit of this film that actually worked, and that felt consistent, and that, all these things, was when I just said, like, okay, I'm going to completely change the sound. Actually, here somebody was saying this, but I'm going to cut that out, and I'm going to smear this together, and I'm just going to. So you choose the focus of what you hear is at least as important as what you see. So I think that's one of the things to really, emphasize about the editing of this film, is that, what the sound held the key to how the film would find its own. Yeah.
And we have about 5 minutes left, and maybe we'll have another 10 minutes. I could send another Zoom link to see if anyone wants to ask questions. Thanks, David. And what's your fascination with East Asia?
Oh yeah. Well, it started very much with me becoming aware, when I was going to film school, that I had this interest in, what the signs of the time, or the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, what it was doing to people. So I had this fascination with, finding subjects that would really express what was going on. So at some point, when I was making film in Rotterdam, I had read in the newspaper that there had been a lot of patients that had gotten burnouts and that had gotten not a midlife but like a quarter life crisis. So yeah, I made my first feature film like that, very very low budget as well. And then I started to just really like in the newspaper read about how fast um, China was changing, and I just got very curious because I was just like, wow, if society changes so quickly, there must be a lot of let's say muscle ache of that growth. There must be uh, there must be a lot of issues where people just feel that they can't keep up with the movement of society, a lot of alienation. So that's why for one project I went to China to kind of explore that, and that's really like this very fast changing society, social landscape, and also the generation gap between people of my generation and their parents. Those kind of things I found more and more interesting, and I think that's really why I was living in Shanghai for a few years, and why I came across this rapid social change and the alienation that it brings about. That became my subject. So that's basically it.
David, what are your future projects?
Um, I have three projects that I'm working on right now. Um, First of all, I'm doing a film probably next year about a wolf child. So that somebody actually left behind in the forest, a feral child, and raised by wolves. That's one. That's going to be a feature film. And I'm also going to do something here on Taiwan um, about the Dutch history in Taiwan. Uh, what very few people know is that Taiwan was actually once a trade post by the Dutch VOC, the trading company, and that history is quite fascinating. So I'm going to do a film about that as well. And then also now in the short term, I'm going to do a film, a multi-screen installation, which is going to be an experimental dance film on 3 screens at the same time.
Oh, this is interesting. And um, is it easy to make these films, or are you in pre-production? Have you got partners, or how does it work?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because as a total opposite, I kind of have two modes of production, if you will. There are these big films that are of a budget of like 2-3 million euros, and I do those, of course, with production companies, and then the set will be this big thing with 70 people walking around, and so I write those as well. So it takes years to get the script to a level that it will be able to attract funding, mostly by governments, not so soft money, not hard money. So like the Dutch Film Fund is a big contributor to my films. Um, so I have like on one hand, there's like these big projects that are like always taking years to finally by the time you're standing on the set, years have passed. And on the other hand, I also do things where it be documentary or fiction, that are much more spontaneous, and that will be more like something like applying to a fund, something like you want to research something or you want to write a script, and then actually taking that money and just doing the whole film for it already. So it's like very very low budget, very quick, very impulsive stuff with very small sets. And I actually find that having very few people involved, I mean very few crew, and doing a lot yourself, and just having a few people that do it with a lot of passion and just are helping out, there's a lot of it gives you a lot of freedom as well, a lot of spontaneity, a lot of improvisation, and So yeah, I I I kind of try to do one bigger project and then do a smaller project while I wait for the next big project. And I don't at all see it like those bigger projects are necessarily more important or better. You know, because a film has more money, that means nothing about the final quality of the film. Actually, some of my more intuitive, more impulsive projects have had the greatest result, in my own opinion.
And what about in between? What do you do in between films?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's I do in between doing bigger films, I do a smaller film. I mean, I also do photography. I like to just explore and hit nightly cities. You know, walking around for nights on end with my camera and just doing photography. Um, that's one of the yeah. That's actually what I do.
Interesting. Jaden, do you have any questions for David? He's on my he's on the MA digital documentary course at Holloway.
Yes. Yes. Hello, David. Hello, Richard.
I know.
Um, yeah, I used to notice that there was footage which you used WeChat's voice to change the roles between the man and the woman. And I would like to ask, how did you come up with this excellent opinion? Did you write a script before or confirm filming style in advance?
Well, I mean, I wanted to use WeChat because that was just so obviously also how people communicate of that generation in China. Um, so I believe I knew that I wanted to connect the characters in the film. So the two of them, they did know each other. So it wasn't totally scripted, but I believe, you know, it wasn't a real call between the two of them either. I asked I asked her to, you know, record some messages to him while not actually sending them to him, just sending them to my phone. And I asked him to reply. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's really perfect, I think. Because I am Chinese, so I know Gui Bian,
Yeah,
and I know that he is also a primary school's teacher,
that's
I
right.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
And what do you think the difference? Because he did rapper, he is a rapper and he is a teacher. What do you think? How to, yes, because that's really different, I think.
It's very, very different, and also his style uh, in rapping is a little bit like I mean, you could probably compare him to like a Marilyn Manson or something, you know, like a very dark, kind of gothic rapper. He says also himself, his rapping is full of anger. He's very outspoken. So it's not like, okay, it's a school teacher and he's gonna rap, so it's probably gonna be something cute or something child friendly or you know. He's so I really think that it's just it's just someone with two very outspoken passions, and they both coexist in the same person. Um, yeah, I don't think one is an extension of the other. I don't think that his teaching at primary school influences him as a rapper or vice versa. It's just two totally different things in his mind.
Yes. I think maybe one is his job, one is his favorite habit, I think.
Yeah, but I think also the interesting thing about him is that he really likes teaching as well. So it's not
Yes.
like one thing is just work. They're both his passion in another way. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of comments. They said he is very, he is a good teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I know that.
Yeah. Because my undergraduate degree was complete in Chengdu. So Yeah, so I know that people in these two cities have cinema habits and cinema eating habits. And I would like to know more about your thoughts about these two cities. What do you think? Yeah, and what do you think the people? Yeah,
I mean, both are Sichuan cities. They both eat very, very spicy. They're both addicted to hot
yeah,
pot. Yet the cities are very different because Chongqing is very fast and very chaotic, and I think is more business minded. And Chengdu is actually more cultural and is very quiet and very calm. So Chengdu is a very very laid back city, as I remember. Yeah. So the two cities have some cultural similarities, but I think the two cities also have beef. The two cities have some argument also. I think they don't like each other. But it's very
yeah,
but it's very common, right? It's very common. It's the same thing in Holland, like people from Amsterdam don't like people from Rotterdam. Here in Taiwan, it's people from Taipei say that people from Kaohsiung are stupid. It's always like if you have two big cities in one
yeah.
region. Sichuan is like the country, this sense. So
Because maybe they are very close. So,
right, yeah, 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 yeah.
so I would like to ask another question is, after finishing the filming, and did you feel that the filming was different from what you expected before?
No, because I didn't expect anything. That's the nice thing about doing these kind of projects. Very much on intuition. Like when I when I do a big fiction film, I have years to think about it and how it should look and how and then I do it, and then finally I'm often disappointed because it didn't work out as well as I hoped it would be. But with this, it's just like, okay, I have a great subject, what's happening to these rappers. I have a great location because Chongqing is fascinating. And everything that's going to happen in front of the camera, everything that's going to happen while I'm on this trip making this film, it's all extra, it's all bonus. It's like so I was only surprised with how much the location and the people were giving to the film all the time. So yeah, that's one good advice, I think. If you're doing something like this, you have to just know very much what you're interested in, and then but keep the rest very playful and be very open to what you will find, and then you will capture great stuff, because life will just happen. The camera is just there. You just have to react.
Yeah, I think you know enough about China. I think that's very good.
Yeah, it's good to do that in China as well, because China is like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
China is about improvisation. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you,
very
man.
much.
I have a
Yeah.
couple, David, of quick questions, last ones. How do you speak Chinese? How did you manage?
Yeah,
Yeah, I do speak Chinese. Not very well, but I do speak it more, definitely more than a little. Uh, Recently, I've been going to school to also learn how to read and write the characters. I studied my Chinese basically online, and also in having friendships and just having to use it. Um, so there's a certain kind of level of Chinese where you can just basically say what you need and what you want, and you can understand basic things. But I think Chinese is a very, very hard language. If you want to express yourself more deeply and more sophisticatedly, there's wall after wall after wall. So every once in a while, I climb a wall and I'm on the other side, and I find there's another wall. So when I listen to the radio, for example, and there's the news broadcast, and they're just talking blah 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 very fast, it's still like I don't understand anything. Like, wow, I've been here for 15 years now, and I still don't understand almost anything of what they're saying. But in a conversation one-on-one, I can have, long conversations with people. So it's a layered language. Yeah, that about the language. Yeah.
You mentioned interests, and I could see that as a potential advice for future filmmakers and current filmmakers. Do what you're interested in. What interests you in? Do you have a next project in mind related to a documentary, if you're allowed to say?
Well, no, I'm very much looking for a subject at the moment. I've been working very hard on my fiction films, on writing the scripts and submitting them and getting funding, reaching funding deadlines. And now I'm really like, man, I really want to do something again, like a documentary, just like Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains, but I have to find the right angle. So what, at first I wanted to, it's also the pandemic which has stopped me, because at this moment, even though I'm so close, I cannot travel to China. Even if I would travel to China, I would have to be 2 weeks in quarantined in China, and then I would have to be 2 weeks quarantined in Taiwan again. So that's like a month. So that's there were more subjects in China, because I had the idea to expand this documentary into something broader. So then I would be like, there would be one chapter as the film, as you've seen, about the rappers, but then in another city, I would maybe find another youth movement that is also reaching, the limitations of, where the freedom of speech can cannot go past. So I was going to I wanted to find another 2 cities and find groups of artists, or I don't know, maybe visual artists somewhere else, or that are also that are finding their own identity, but that are also somewhere reaching the ceiling of what they can't express anymore in China. So those three together would then be one feature film featuring 3 cities and 3 youth movements. That's what I was looking for. But that kind of stopped with the pandemic, because I can't go anywhere.
That's brilliant. We look forward to seeing your next films. David Verbeek, that's absolutely fantastic. Thanks for allowing us, giving your time to discuss your film.
Very well.
And it was very, very interesting, certainly eye-opening. Trapped in the City of a Thousand Mountains is available on YouTube, on the Guardian website, and many other channels online. Certainly those are the main ones. Thanks very much for listening.
Okay, great. All right, please send me the link to that. Great. Yes. Then I can pass it on as well. Great.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, okay. David.
Nice talking to you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to a Fish Out of Water podcast. This is your host, Richard Lipman. Should you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please get in touch. Sponsored by Camera Museum of London at 44 Museum Street.